You're getting, as far as the injured guys go, Derek, I mean, like, are you optimistic that you might be seeing them opening night now?
Yeah, we are. I think we may even see him early next week in practice. Just a matter of how game ready he will be. It's something we'll evaluate towards the end of next week. Then Kopp is full go in practice. Regular season game this weekend, he might be available for us. Obviously, we're not going to be cautious through the two preseason games, and we fully expect him to be available for us next Friday.
And Robert Hagg,
Yeah, a little bit different body injury, so it'll take a little time, but we may expect him early next week too, like Sundquist. And again, just a matter of if he'll be game ready for next Friday.
but obviously all plays into the roster too. It's just,
Of course,
juggling.
100%, absolutely.
With Simon Edmonton, when you were looking at pairings, what did you think as far as who you wanted to see and when would be a good fit?
No one specifically, just getting him minutes and times. He's been in his exhibition games in our top four. He's been in that 5-6 role. Just wanted to get him minutes. He's been on the penalty kill. He's been on the power play. More about getting him minutes, not necessarily who his partner is.
With, you had from what I've seen, you've been out there along with Gustav Lindstrom. What stands out to you about Gustav's game, and what do you want to see from him?
Probably a little harder to play against. It's more defensive stops. He gets a little, I'm not going to say passive in his game, but he'll play a contained type game, which is fine. I like the way he skates. He breaks pucks out. He helps us in transition. But I think some of those numbers where we were just spending way too much time in our zone last year, we need everyone, not only Goose or anyone else, anyone within our D zone to help us out in getting those stops.
Is that something where, because he was just saying, in Sweden, they're taught if you have the puck coming ice but don't see anything, it's better to circle back and try
No,
again.
I think you're talking with the puck. For
Yeah,
me,
yeah.
no. For me, it's
Rather than chip it in.
yeah, no. I don't mind that. I don't mind. We want puck possession. We have a plan with our regroups. We have a plan with the puck. And I don't mind certain players erring on possession. Of course, we want to take risk out of our game, make the play that's given. But for him, it's not so much things with the puck. I think it's him without the puck. We've been a cap team in Tampa. We've never flirted with a full roster. This is new territory. I didn't even know how many guys we could keep. I know it sounds funny, but in Tampa we'd go into games with 12 and 6 sometimes. We were playing short at games. So no, this is going to be a jigsaw puzzle on whether we do the 13 and 8 or the 14 and 7, and there's still a lot going into that. And that will probably go right until Sunday. Yeah. Helps us on the breakouts. Probably a little harder than I had thought than the zone. He looks like a really good hockey player. So still progressing.
You've got a pretty good balance on defense of lefties and righties, and you have the luxury of matching lefty and righty. Is that something you necessarily want to stick to, or is it you have no problem like two lefties or two righties?
Ideally, we'd love 3 and 3, but we have no problem giving us our best chance to win that night. And Bob running the D, I'd leave it up to him. This lineup may even be setting up for an 11 and 7 going forward. Something I've had some experience and success with in the past. So, yeah, ideally would love the 3 lefties, 3 righties, but there's going to be some give and take, especially with some injuries, that we may have 4 lefties in the lineup, and we'll manage it accordingly.
What do you like about going like 7?
Sometimes within those 7D, you're going to feel who's going, who's not. Sometimes if a certain player is going, now maybe it gives Bob the luxury of giving him the 16, 17 minutes. If he's not, maybe one of those, Dean, if you will, in that 5-6 range. You get a feel of giving someone else the 16 minutes. Now he gets 12 minutes. And kind of just share minutes. And then it just offensively, ideally in a perfect world, it gets some of your better players more minutes. It's just there's times it's uncomfortable, especially if you get an injury while the game's going on. But you can see why the 7-11 can be beneficial when used correctly.
With Edmondson, is there a special team, one over the other, you think you're more comfortable with him on?
Great question. I think he's progressed in both. The penalty kill, he's shown a really long stick. He's shown the ability to be a little harder than I may have anticipated previously with seeing him. He's shown good anticipation on it. And power play, same thing. I just think it's typical growth for him. You can see some games you can see him good in all areas, 5-on-5, PPPK. And then there's other games where you can see the areas he needs to develop in. So neither specifically. Excited about both of them for him. And ultimately, when he's ready to be an NHL everyday player, I think you'll see him playing in all three of those situations.
Was last night kind of like a microcosm, Derek? It seemed like there was flashes that you could see where, all right, he is who he is, and then there's a couple instances where it's like, oh boy, so that's to learn maybe a little something or other.
Yeah, I think that just credits how hard the league is. Arguably, his best game in camp was Pittsburgh the other night. And then he comes out to last night, and you can see the ups and downs of the game, which is very typical of a young D-man. And this is what we're going to be here for him, have him fight through it with him, show him video, develop him. I thought he had a really good practice today, and just keep moving forward.
How do you know whether you're going to be like that is ready to have that development process occur in the NHL or whether it needs to happen?
Well, ideally, Steve will tell me in some ways. So, no, that's something we would. That's a great question. In some ways, exactly why you have that manager coach layer. We've been talking, evaluating every day on it. That's a really tough balance. 7-8 years ago, it's a no-brainer. He starts in the American Hockey League. Today's day and age, the cap era, there is that develop on the fly, which is a reality. So it's a great question because that's something we talk about daily and often. So a lot goes into it. I don't know if I have exacts or specifics to it, but there is that balance of what his touches and minutes would look like in the American Hockey League versus what they would look like in the National Hockey League.
Can you just kind of go into that a little bit more? His evaluation process for you as a head coach is a little different. What the dynamic has been like with Steve Yzerman and how much say that you're having in that evaluation process and who ultimately makes that roster mix?
No, I think it'll be a joint decision. And again, I think I mentioned this the other day. This is why you need the manager-coach layer. I want to win every single night. And I will argue or want the best possible lineup. Steve's job is look at the big picture. And that is where this team's going to be 6 months from now. This is where his team's going to be a year and a half from now. This is where his team's going to be 2-3 years from now. So I think he understands where I'm coming from. I certainly understand where he's coming from. And I think that's where you find that balance of that manager and coach.
How difficult is it going to be to get down to 23 guys by 5 o'clock on Monday when it appears that virtually every player that's in this competition, probably in their own mind, feel they've done everything you've asked?
That is going to be difficult, and that's a great question because we've been having these conversations, and they've been difficult conversations. But I think that's the step in heading in the right direction. Steve and his group has drafted well of late. Steve and his group had a good off season. We have the luxury of some balance or some depth and having to fight through some of these roster decisions. So not easy, and I think it's something that might ultimately go right to that last minute, and there's a lot that goes into it. But I'm happy that we are having these tough conversations. Obviously, I have not been around the last few years, and I don't know if they were put in a similar situation with a little more depth within our group.
Just to follow up a little bit on what Art said, anticipate that it would be like this as far as tough decisions?
I hope so. I don't know how much to anticipate. Again, it's kind of my fresh start with everyone. But yes, I think some players that will be fighting for spots. Everybody showed fairly well, and everyone showed holes within their game too. And this is why I've mentioned many times throughout the camp that I've liked the 8 games. The 8 games have been very beneficial for us, and I may be the only NHL coach in the history of the National Hockey League to say he enjoys 8 NHL games, but this was a need for us right now, and you can see us going through it. I mean, you even talked about certain players, and you can see yourself the ups and downs in some of their plays. So I think it's been necessary, and I think it's been a positive, and we're still working through that.
For guys like Raymond and Sider, obviously still pretty young, but really have been a key part of this team now throughout the last season, how impressed have you been by their maturity now that they're entering their second season?
A lot. They're still growing. You know, it's you see it all the time. These players have immediate success in this league, and it's very hard to have success in this league. And then, you know, they go through wanting more out of their game, and they maybe do things that they weren't doing the previous year. It's a tough balance, and that's still growth. That's still developing. I mean, I go to Mo's first exhibition game. He was fingerprints all over a 2-on-0. And just talking with him, walking through that, you can see he has not been in the middle of that. But still, at the same time, you want to let him play on his toes and be who he is. And I think Raymond's the same way. There's development in his game, little details in his game he still needs to improve on. So it's exciting. Both these players want to be good players. They want to work at it. From day one, I've Lucas's attitude, his approach in camp, and Mo the same way. I understand the excitement with both those players, but they're still growing and have a long ways to go also.
Yeah, last one for me, kind of that message to them, obviously now that they enter their second season, they not only have pressure from themselves, but they have pressure from the fan base, from the other teams that now know them a little bit better after a full season. What's kind of your message to them to combat all of those challenges?
Control the things you can control. Live in the moment. You know, I'd even add, because they are the players they are, they're going to be naturally looked upon in a leadership role. No, I don't foresee either of them wearing a letter or being asked to run a room like that. But when you start turning into a really good player, people look up to you. It's just a reality of it. So, and that's part of that development. There's a lot that goes into it, and it's hard. And that's why it takes time. That's why we work with them and keep them heading in the right direction.
When do you think you'll name the games?
Well, I think we'll take some time. I do not see us doing that before game 1. We may spread those A's around. I think we're doing a good job on camp of evaluating and kind of seeing how this is going to play out, but we're in no rush with that. That's very important. We have the captain. Now it's very important. It's just unique this year in that some of those players that have come in that leadership group are new players through free agency, so it just makes it a little bit of a different dynamic. So I want to be patient with it. We want to help foster it, develop it. We'll take our time with it too.
Derek, you obviously have seen some really high-end talent in Tampa, and I'm not trying to make a comparison, but is there an intangible, or why is Mo, I don't want to sound corny here, why is Mo? I mean, what makes him be able to grasp his game and almost, pardon me for saying this, almost look easy at times for him?
I think there's drive in his game. You guys can see that. He wants to be a player. He wants to elevate his game. He has a passion. It hurts when he loses. I talked about how excited I was with the room, with how much that Pittsburgh loss hurt in the room, because the guys know they played well. They know the process was correct, and we ended up on the bad side of it, and it hurt them, even though it was a preseason game. Those are intangibles that can be developed, but it means something for them. So I think it's that, and some of those guys are driven out, and you will say, like, coming from a Wigan organization, winning the 2 Stanley Cups, being the 3 straight Stanley Cup finals, there is something about special players, and those were special players. I missed some of them. right now. But those are really special players. But those guys had drive. We didn't ultimately win until those guys, their drive kicked in, where they refused to lose and wanted to win. And some of those guys' practice habits, their approach, not accepting losing. I mean, you don't win that much just with talent. And that's, I think, developed, and we're trying to develop that in some of those guys. But Mo's one of those guys that I think, he wants it. You guys see how he talks and his approach and how he plays. I think that's a good start.